Immanuel Kant's critique of judgment continued. The judgment of the sublime has the same quality, quantity, relation, and modality as that of the beautiful, but there are important differences. The beautiful pleases through its form and its bounds, but the sublime is found when a formless object is represented as boundless, even though its totality is present in thought. Hence, while beauty is a satisfaction in quality, the sublime is a satisfaction in respect to quantity. Furthermore, in the sublime the form may seem to violate purposiveness and be quite unsuited to our presentative faculty. It rather should be said that the object is fit for the presentation of a sublimity found in the mind, producing in us a feeling of purposiveness of our powers independent of nature. The sublime has two kinds, the mathematical and the dynamic. Whereas that of the beautiful is restful, the judgment of the sublime stirs a movement of the mind which is judged as subjectively purposive and is referred either to the cognition generating A, the mathematically sublime, or to the will, which is then generating B, the dynamically sublime. Firstly, with the mathematically sublime, we could always think something still greater than whatever the senses give us. While we cannot have an intuition of the infinite, which is absolutely great, I mean, the infinite is absolutely great, not that we cannot have an intuition of the infinite is greater. Anyway, while we cannot have an intuition of the infinite, which is absolutely great, we can comprehend it logically. To do this without contradiction presupposes a supersensible faculty. Thus we refer to the idea of reason, God, these are the ideas, rather, of reason, God, freedom, immortality. Comparing the objects of nature, however grand, with these ideas, we gain a feeling of respect for our own destination according to the laws of reason. Now, as for the dynamically sublime, on observing in nature mighty objects from which we are in no danger, if we could think of a case in which we would fear them, we feel the emotion of the sublime. It calls up a comparison with our own power, which is small physically, but which in our rational faculty has a superiority to nature, even in its immensity, in the sublimity of the mind's destination. The judgment of either kind of sublime is thus not so much upon the object, but on our state of mind in the estimation of it. Like the judgment of the beautiful, the judgment of the sublime postulates a common faculty among men and women, in this case the feeling for the legislation of reason, that is, for what is moral. Kant considers it requisite to provide a deduction or proof of its grounds for any judgment claiming necessity. But since the judgment of taste is neither cognitive nor practical, it can draw its necessity from no concepts. Rather, it has a twofold peculiarity. First, it claims the universality of a singular, not a universal proposition, and secondly, it claims the necessary assent of everyone in a priori, but cannot depend on a priori grounds of proof for doing so. This is why I don't like talking about thesis, antithesis, synthesis. It's a nightmare for someone with a slight lisp like me. Fortunately, thesis, antithesis, synthesis isn't Hegel, so I don't need to bother with that when I'm talking about Hegel, which I'd rather be doing. Where was I? It claims the necessary assent of everyone a priori, but cannot depend on a priori grounds of proof for doing so. And because of what they are, Kant asserts the explanation of these peculiarities suffices as a deduction. As to the necessity, although the judgment of each individual improves with exercise, at each stage it claims the necessary assent of others, it claims autonomy. If it's submitted to external principles, it would be something other than taste. As to quantity, since it judges without a concept, this must always be singular. The tulip is beautiful. Pardon me. The tulip is beautiful. Never all tulips are beautiful, since the universal subject term of the latter is a concept and brings the understanding into the process. Obviously, then, no objective principle of taste is possible, and no rule can be given to art. Rather, the principle of taste is the subjective principle of judgment in general, operating on the condition solely of the faculty of judgment itself. Unlike mere labour or science or commercial handicraft, beautiful art is free. Yet we must be conscious of it as art and not nature, to keep it within the framework that will allow it to please in the mere act of judging. Beautiful art is the work of genius, which is the innate mental disposition, ingenium, through which nature gives the rule to art. Genius is an original productive talent, not a capacity for following rules. Its products serve as example setting standards for others. Natural beauty is a beautiful thing, but artificial beauty is a beautiful representation of the thing. In some beauties, such as the latter, inevitably a concept enters, and enjoyment through reason as well as aesthetic judgment enters with it. Taste, but not genius, is a requisite for judging works of beautiful art. Genius is a faculty of presenting aesthetical ideas, representations of the imagination, which occasion much thought where no one thought is adequate. This is a particular kind of the play which harmonizes the imagination and the understanding. It goes beyond the limits of experience to find presentations of such completeness that they have no examples in nature, presentations which will communicate the aesthetic pleasure to others. The chief aesthetic problem of Kant's time was how to controvert seriously matters of taste as though taste had an objective standard, when we also assert that there is no disputing tastes. Kant cast the problem as an antinomy in the dialectic of the aesthetical judgment. The thesis is the judgment of taste is not based upon concepts, for otherwise it would admit of controversy, would be determinable of proofs. The antithesis is the judgment of taste is based on concepts, for otherwise, despite its diversity, we could not quarrel about it, we could not claim for our judgment the necessary assent of others. The apparent contradiction is resolved when we recognize that concept has a different reference in each proposition. A concept may be either determinable or not. The thesis refers to determinable concepts. The antithesis refers to the one indeterminable concept, the supersensible, on which the faculty of judgment rests. So understood, both are true and the contradiction disappears. The beautiful is the symbol of the morally good in that it gives pleasure with a claim for the agreement of everyone else. It makes the mind feel an elevation of itself above mere pleasantness of sensation, and enables it to estimate the worth of others in this regard also. For just as the reason does in respect to the practical, the judgment gives the law to itself with respect to the objects of pure aesthetic satisfaction. The propedeutic to the beautiful arts lies in humane studies, not in precepts, and it reaches art through the social spirit and the communication of men and women which is distinctive of humanity. Taste, which is at bottom a faculty for judging the sensible illustration of moral ideas. Taste is at bottom a faculty for judging of the sensible illustration of moral ideas. That's a direct quote there. The sequel of the study of purpose in nature without purpose is the study of the basis of judging nature as having purpose, the critique of the teleological judgment. We have absolutely no grounds to ascribe purpose objectively to nature, but must regard purpose as a principle supplied by ourselves for bringing this phenomena of nature under rules wherever the laws of mechanical causality do not suffice to do so. A purpose is a concept which functions as a cause of that of which it is the concept. In order to see the possibility of a thing as a purpose, it is a requisite that its form is not possible according to natural laws, and that the empirical knowledge of its cause and effect presupposes concepts of reason. The things regarded as natural purposes are organized living beings. The understanding takes causes to be immediate preceding conditions, efficient causes of their effects. But the reason can think a final cause. For a thing to be a natural purpose, its part must be possible only through their reference to the whole, and they should so combine in the unity of the whole that they are reciprocally cause and effect of each other. Thus nothing is in vain in it. I'm saying thus nothing is in vain in it. I didn't say thus nothing is in vain in it. Like I was asking the question anyway. The being so constituted may be regarded as the product of both efficient causes and final causes, an organized and self-organizing being. In a word, a natural purpose. Organized beings give the basis for teleology, as they first afford objective reality to the concept of a natural purpose. From regarding them, we are carried farther reflectively to regard the mechanism of all of nature as subordinated according to principles of reason. The reflective judgment must subsume presentations under a law not yet given, hence it must serve as principle for itself, therefore it needs maximums for its reflection, so as to attain to concepts and cognize nature even according to empirical laws. Among its maxims the following antinomy arises. Thesis. All production of material things and their forms must be judged possible according to merely mechanical laws. Antithesis. Some products of material nature cannot be judged to be possible according to merely mechanical laws, but these are maxims, not substantive propositions. The concepts involved in maxims of the judgment, including mechanical laws, are not accorded objective reality, but are merely guides to reason. Now the thesis may be acceptable as a maximum of the determinant and the antithesis of the reflective judgment, hence no contradiction in fact exists between them. To unite the mechanism of nature and the principle of purposes, teleology places the supersensible tentatively at the basis of phenomenal nature, but of it we can have no theoretical knowledge whatever. We should explain everything in nature by mechanism as far as this is in our power, but we should acknowledge that some things, which we cannot even state for investigation without a concept of a purpose of reason, must finally be accounted for by purposes. For anything in nature, if we ask why it exists, the answer is either that it rose solely out of nature's mechanism without design, or else it has somewhere a design ground as a contingent being, and if the latter, we can say either that its purpose lies in itself, a final purpose, or that the ground of its existence is external to it in another natural being. Apparently, man is the only being we can regard as the ultimate purpose of creation here on earth, for he is the only creature who, and I quote here, the only creature who can form a concept for his purposes and who can, by his reason, make out of an aggregate of purposely formed things a system of purposes. End quote. That within him which is to be furthered as a purpose must be either what nature could perhaps satisfy, his happiness, or else his aptitude and skill, with which he can turn nature to all kinds of purposes, his culture. But if man makes happiness his whole purpose, a purpose dependent upon nature, this renders him incapable of positing his existence as a final purpose, and of being in harmony with it. The culture of skill, and particularly of the will, of discipline, makes us receptive of higher purposes than nature itself can supply. Through culture of the beautiful arts and the sciences, we are prepared for a reign in which reason alone shall have authority. The moral law, as the rational condition of the use of our freedom, obliges us a priori, as shown in the Critique of Practical Reason, to strive for the highest good in the world possible through freedom. The highest physical good is happiness, but the reason supposes virtue to be the worthiness to be happy, and it is impossible to represent virtue and happiness as connected by natural causes or as harmonized in life. Thus, in order to represent to ourselves the final purpose consistent with the moral law, we must assume a moral world cause. While the final purpose cannot be regarded as having objective reality, it has subjective practical reality by being embodied in our actions towards the highest good. Through it we gain the possibility of thinking the world as a purpose of order, although we gain no proof of the existence of its original being. And I quote, "For the existence of the original being as a Godhead, or of the soul as an immoral spirit," Freudian slip there, sorry, I'll start again. And I quote, "For the existence of the original being as a Godhead, or of the soul as an immortal spirit, absolutely no proof in the theoretical point of view is possible." End quote. Faith, as habitus, or disposition, not act, is the moral attitude of reason toward belief in something unattainable by theoretical cognition. The mind assumes that, since it is so commanded, the duty to attain the highest good is possible to fulfill. It has grounds for such a faith in the faculty of the reason freely to legislate in accordance with the moral law. Only freedom, among the three pure rational ideas, God, freedom, and immortality, proves its objective reality by its effects in nature, and thus it renders possible the reconciliation in thought and nature of God, immortality, and freedom. The end.